Yes, I'm sure you can tell I'm breathing it in and breathing it out in the All Souls tradition. But it's not peace and love. It's gratitude and appreciation and a heartfelt thank you for letting me do this, for having me up here today. I want to thank my fellow trustees, the ministers, and this congregation for this precious moment you're giving me, for this opportunity to address you and to give a message that I would like for you to take with you and remember forever. This is a moment I know I will remember forever. Thank you, and good morning, All Souls. When I came up through the processional, turned around, it was a gripping moment because it looked like my life in front of me. Because I see here so many people from so many different parts of my life, so many different relationships. Just incredible. Thank all of you for coming. I see people from Lee School 70 years ago, 8 blocks up the street. I can remember some of their phone numbers. It's just incredible. I see people from Edison High School, a mile or so down the road. I like to think I got started at Lee and then jump-started at Edison. Isn't that the truth? But I see people from my men's group, my running club, different things I'm involved in the community, and that really makes me feel good. It's just like, what a vote of confidence. Thank you so much for coming. All these relationships mean a lot. I look around here and I see people that I've helped at times in life, helped some people get through things, had your back, but more so I look around and I see how many of you have had mine and have carried me, individuals, groups, organizations, and the arms of this church wrapped around me for such a long time. It's precious, and I thank you so much. When I talk about grace, I'm going to be talking about compassion and kindness, each of us to the other, positioning us for grace. That is, our grace. Grace in relationship. Now, I'm going to mention one thing now, and I will mention it a few more times, I think, in the next few minutes. You can't be right or wrong alone. Think about this. You can't. You can't be ethical alone. You can only be right or wrong in relationship. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean one person. It can mean all kinds of things. And as you'll hear in a minute, the Buddhists think it's all of us, sacred, all connected, everything. But you can't be right or wrong alone. And we're not alone. And this church is all about being not alone and being together and caring for each other and caring for ourselves. There's so many things in life that are really indescribable, just when you think about it. Love, holding the hand of a dying person, feeling their transition as you feel your own during that time. Colors, light, energy, spirit. How many of these things you just end up saying, well, this color is like this other color. And our spoken word in any language doesn't quite get there a lot of times. And this is sort of like grace. Everybody has a different way of feeling it or saying it or describing it. The dictionary is not necessarily right. But I'm going to propose a definition of grace to start today. Grace is the here and the now, in this space, in this setting, right now, us. This is grace. And John Wolfe said it better than any of us. John Wolfe was the senior minister at this church from 1960 to 1997. He was the one who so vigorously defended this 9 square foot area that I'm fidgeting around in as being the most powerful, the most sacred, also the freest 9 square feet in the world. Say what you want with impunity, say what you want with immunity, you're fully protected. And so, of course, there's some risk. But that was John Wolfe. And I want to share some thoughts that John Wolfe had about grace, but I want to take you on a short journey. And if you'd like to close your eyes, that's fine. If you'd like to just sort of be still and think. But I also want you to think about the person next to you, the person who's important in your life, somebody who's significant, somebody who's hurting, somebody you're helping, somebody you're in relationship with. A familiar scene, sometimes taken for granted. You walk into the church sanctuary knowing your sins aren't forgiven and not seeking forgiveness. You're in the company of many who are there because of an experience in life, something that happened that was unjust, causing them to lose faith. Worse, according to Wolfe, a good number of your fellow worshipers have lost sight of the beauty in metaphor, can't stand poetry, are so covered with guilt and grief, they can't see the forest for the trees, can't imagine what good exists. These broken spirits lack the higher purpose that adds value to life, and they need to have it restored. They are questioning, doubting, seeking, exploring. They are the All Souls congregation. You sense a feeling of fullness of being, that there is far more here, that the world is pregnant with possibility. You're struck by the refulgent nature seen through the windows. You feel the amazing miracle of everything, that there isn't anything that isn't a miracle. You know, these are the reasons we're here, gathered in covenant, believing not in anything so much as in everything. Wolfe says this setting is grace, and that we are justified by grace and grace alone, that love beyond belief is a standard of grace. Do I hear a yes, church? Yes. Do I hear a yes, David?
Yes.
As I look around all these faces, I know that there are many here who have suffered, been vulnerable, had difficult times, just like me. We're all in it together. We've all had different issues. We've all needed each other, and we still do, and we always will. If you have a broken spirit, you don't have a full life. You cannot appreciate the beauty in metaphor. If you can't appreciate the beauty in metaphor, you can't appreciate literature, music, art, nature, wildlife, poetry. And it's sad because you then can't absorb these things and you can't share them. When you're kind and compassionate with others, you can't quite get there because you don't have these things, because you have a broken spirit. It can be restored, and that's what we're all about, but from time to time, we have a broken spirit, and I've had mine, and I'm going to share that with you shortly. In the Jewish faith, it is said that God expects us to offer each other undeserved kindness. Acting with grace gives one a certain sense of agency or control. Viktor Frankl probably suffered as much as anybody we can imagine. His family was rounded up and put in the concentration camps during the Holocaust. His elderly parents died in the gas chambers. His wife died of typhus, but Viktor Frankl lived through it and became someone who has devoted his life to writing about the Holocaust. And the way he described it is that grace is the last of the human freedoms. And when you think about this, a lot can be taken away from us short of life. But one thing that can never be taken away from us is the right to act with kindness and compassion in any circumstance in life. And if Viktor Frankl said this after what he's been through, and after what Reverend Randy told us 2 weeks ago about Nelson Mandela, who accepted his captors after 27 years in prison, then it applies to us too. This agency that we have, which is human and distinguishes us as human, is something we should all consider in our relationships with others. The Lama Surya Das, a well-known Buddhist poet and author, in his book, Awakening the Buddha Within, says grace is the isness of life. Isness. Think about this, that everything is sacred and connected, that grace is in us, we share grace, it's the isness. I love that word, and that's the title of my message, Grace, the Isness of Life. I'd like to have you remember that, because I think it's really something, if you think about, it reminds you of kindness and compassion in any circumstance against all odds. Now, I don't like to dwell on the grief of others without them knowing mine, so I'll share some of mine with you. I like to think of my life as up to age 45 and after. Call it part 1, part 2. When I was 45, I was actually giddy with life. Giddy. I was so excited about everything. I'd had a lot of education. I had a promising career. I had a beautiful wife, a beautiful daughter, a beautiful son, a millionaire's family. I was in excellent health. I was very fit. I seemed to have a lot of friends, an active social life, nice home out in the suburbs. And I just kept pinching myself, saying, this can only get better. It's going to get better. It's the best, and it's going to get better. That was part 1. Right at about age 45, things didn't get better. The first thing that scared me was my divorce. I didn't see it coming. I tried to save my marriage. And when it didn't work, I started getting scared. And I really realize now that I didn't have the infrastructure in place that should have been there to keep me from getting scared. But I was. And I never lived with my children again after that. It's something I regret to this day. Not too long after that, I lost my father, then I lost my mother, then I lost the mother of my children. Along the way, I lost a couple of jobs that I probably should have held on to. I lost 2 wonderful dogs that I loved. And it just seemed like these things started happening, and it got worse. And about 6 years ago, the fragile bottom of this existence collapsed. The bottom fell out. And that's when my son committed suicide. And it was a really difficult thing to deal with. I went to the funeral service to deal with my son's remains and to make some arrangements. And I don't remember that day very well. I don't remember that meeting. I don't remember what was said and done and signed and what arrangements were made. But most of all, I remember the person in charge of that meeting said something to me that has stuck in my craw forever. And it was like getting in my craw, pulling out my spirit and breaking it. He said, I won't let you see the body. I won't let you see the body. I didn't ask to see it. I didn't want to see it. But he said that. Now, as I think back on that day, I think he might have been doing what should be done, and he might have thought it was kind. I thought it was the worst 7 words that anybody could have selected. Now, I never really shared this with anyone, I travel a fair amount in my work around the country. So I don't like traveling alone much, because when I go to airports especially, and I see fathers and sons hugging, saying congratulations, saying hello, goodbye, I love you, Godspeed, whatever it might be, that's when the tears start to come. And that's when I start to think, here, remember, I won't let you see the body. And this is something that you don't get over, but it is something that relationships help. Usually, it's people in your life. And for me, it's been my life partner, Myra. Myra, I love you so much. More than I can tell you. Love beyond love. Thank you. And Diane, what a gift you are. So fortunate to have you in my life. So, obviously I've walked through the shadow of the valley of death, and I've got some authority to talk about it. I feel I've got some experience about it, but people aren't the only thing. It can be signs and wonders and other metaphors. I was in a particularly despairing mood sometime last summer. And in our great room of our home, we've got a vaulted ceiling 27 feet up. I mean, it's almost like this. And on the east and west sides, there are window panes 27 feet up. So you can kind of see east, west, and up in the sky. And I was lying down on the floor trying to get up enough energy or courage to just do my stretching, just to do some stretching. That's what I was intending to do. I was lying there. All of a sudden, from nowhere, but I like to think it was from heaven, against the glass, 25 feet from where I was lying, appeared a beautiful, big, wild, somewhat frightening red-tailed hawk. And that hawk was against the glass and doing all this. Lasted about 4 seconds. Might have been just seeing himself or chasing another bird, but I'm pretty sure he was talking to me. And what he said to me was, Phil, get up off the floor, get up off your back, get up off your butt, stand up, look straight, be tall, go forward. There are people who love you. There are people who need you. There are people who need to nourish your spirit. There are people who need to understand your spirit and benefit from it. And you know what? I felt so much better after that hawk talked to me. And you may have had similar experiences. At home, we have hummingbirds coming and flying in like a military formation. We have families of deer, and I'll look out there, and they'll look at me and say, "You're in there? You're out there? How's this work?" But if you can see the beauty in metaphor, your life is so rich compared to not having these things. And if you break a person's spirit, I mean, I felt broken after my son died, but I don't anymore. I feel like I've kind of got it back. And as I prepared this message, I started exploring other kinds of grace, and everybody has a different impression of a higher power or God or some sort of God or living by a covenant. But what I seem to see, what I noticed was, what recurs here is that no matter what that is, it's the preparation during your life, the preparation in relationship. If you live in a relationship of compassion and kindness, you're best poised for grace. One way or another, you're actually exercising grace to be ready for it. And I think that this church is an excellent example of that. We live, according to John Wolfe and me, two good authorities, we are living in grace, and I am so pleased to be part of it. So I'm going to give one more reading by John Wolfe that I think is really relevant. Love beyond belief, practiced by a congregation, means living by standards and affecting others through compassion and kindness. This is essentially our covenant. Grace isn't guaranteed, but life in relationship best practice improves the odds. If it happens, it just happens. It is simply amazing.